Hello, guys, and welcome. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by Obsessed Marketing and Sales Solutions. If you are new to this podcast, you are probably thinking to yourself, why is a marketing and a sales company speaking to me before a conversation about God? Well, that's because that's what my wife and I do for a living. That's why we do so much work with natural, spiritual, holistic businesses, services that are trying to get themselves out there and don't know exactly what they should be doing. There's a real stigma in our community about actually making money with the products you have, the services you are offering up. So if you are a natural-based business, you are a spiritual healer, you are holistic, anything that you do like that, you are needing some help with getting your name out there, you are needing some help selling some products, and you are needing some help actually earning the living that you should be earning from your business, give us a call. We can help you with every single thing that you're possibly doing. Marketing, sales, we can help you with products, we can help you with services, we can help you get your name out there. And the one thing that my wife and I believe completely is that if you have a business that is natural, holistic, spiritual, you need to do the best job you can getting your products and getting your word out there so you can be impacting the world in a positive way, in a way that you know you can. So if you need some help with your business, contact us at obsessedmarketing.ca. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we'll help you with your business, with your products, and with your services. My guest on the podcast today is a very important person to me. I met this man in 2007. I was working with him, I was working for him, and he changed my life. His name is Ron Green. And I affectionately refer to Ron Green as Reverend Ron Green. He is the first person in my life who, when he spoke to me about God, I actually listened. He was the first person. Ron grew up very, very hard in Vancouver. He has a story that's a lot of people talk about growing up on the street. Ron really and truly grew up on the street. He really found his own way through life, didn't have much support. He's retired in southern British Columbia, and he's just living life. I love this man. He's got an unbelievable perspective on life and the way that people should be treating people, and the way that people, if they cultivated a relationship with their God the way that Ron has with his, their lives would be better. And Ron embodies this every single day, and I love him for it. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Reverend Ron Green as much as I did. He's amazing. Without further ado, here is my teacher, my mentor, my friend, Reverend Ron Green. Enjoy. Hello, guys. I want to say right quick before we push the play button on this interview with Reverend Ron, the audio is not very good on this podcast. It was very hard to set this up with Reverend Ron. He doesn't have a computer. He doesn't have a smartphone. This is a recording off of a landline. So this is Ron and I on the phone together. I apologize for the audio. I cleaned it up as much as I could, but bear with me. This is Reverend Ron. Enjoy again. We as seekers are all searching for that divine experience with our God. Listen in as we discuss different people's stories and perspectives about God from their walk of life and from their part of the world. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. Hello, Ron.
Hi, Matt.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing exceptionally well. I'm looking forward to this.
We'll get right into it, Ron, if that's good with you.
Sounds excellent, Matt.
Ronnie, can you tell me about the exact moment in your life that you experienced God or spirit and all of its divinity, and whether you heard it or you felt it or you saw it or you ascended to it or whatever it was that happened to you? Can you tell me about that experience that you had?
Yeah, that was a fairly low part of my life when I was introduced to my Creator. And I can remember when I first started going to, I'll just back up a little bit. It was the birth of my daughter, who is now 29 years old. But I wasn't really confident in my ability to be a good father because I wasn't raised up with good role models in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I can remember calling out to God, and at that time I didn't have a relationship with Him. But I called out to Him anywho. I figured that's the place to go. And, like I just asked, my Creator, I prayed to Him that I wanted to be a good dad. So I went through a few hoops and hurdles to learn what that meant. And so that was kind of the start of my relationship with the living God. And so it was a relationship over the years, because of my relationship with my Creator. He's helped me to change some of my thought processes and how I live my life. And, so.
When you said, Ron, when you were in a low spot there and you had your daughter and you called out to your Creator, did you feel like you got a response right away, or did it prompt you to change your life, or what happened after you made that call to God and said, I need some help me out here?
Yeah, well, my young'un, my Katie, till she is about 2 years old, she tugged on my pant leg every Sunday and told her that she liked her daddy to come with her. And so it took me a little while before I figured maybe I should just honor that.
Like
so
she was asking you to go to church with her?
That's right, yeah. Because I myself, still at that point in time in my life, I had kind of a worldly view about the existence or non-existence of a Creator.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that came into play with fatherhood, and eventually learning that I didn't need to do life on my own. I could have a paraclete, the Spirit of God in my life, helping me sort out my thought processes.
Mm-hmm.
So what I seen, I think, Matt, that really stirred me up initially was when I did finally cave in to my daughter's request. I went to a fellowship here in Cranbrook, and what I seen blew me away. I seen families and children that interacted with each other in respect, and I wasn't kind of used to that kind of an experience. It was more like the Eagles clubs where everybody ripped the toys out of each other's hands and Mummy and Daddy got floshed, Yeah. So that really ministered to me, and I remember at that particular juncture, I was sitting on the fence, so to speak, and when I seen how God worked in that congregation, not to say they were perfect, because none of us are. But they showed something that I yearned, and that was a good relationship with my family and my fellow man. And it seemed that's something that prodded me forward to learn more about a relationship with my Creator.
Did the first church or the first assembly that you went to there in Cranbrook, was there any like leadership, or were you welcomed with open arms and sort of shown the ropes, or did you sort of sit back and participate sort of on the sidelines, and then as you started to understand what was happening, did you dive in, or were you sort of welcomed with open arms and just hopped right in the deep end of the pool, so to speak?
Well, there was some love that permeated in amongst the fellowship, and I knew where the source of love comes from, and that's from our Creator. And it just seemed to me that these people, like, I thought initially that these people are a lot better than me. But, as far as the spiritual end of things went and understanding of the Bible, they knew where to go. When you said go to the book of Acts, they knew exactly where to fly into the Bible, where I was looking around for a week, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't really think that I measured up, but as it turned out, the scriptures are very true in so much as, like, none of us have arrived yet. We're all in process. So I'm just part of a big family of people that are in process. But, as I grew in the faith and grew in my understanding of scriptures, there were some teachings that now that I'm more mature in my faith, they weren't really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Different teachings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sorted all through that. When I first started, I believed what I heard, right?
Yeah.
And then as you mature, it's our responsibility to sort out the Word of God, because that's a love letter to each and every one of us, and it's up to us to dig in and to understand the best we can, eh?
For sure.
I think God honors, the doers, the people that want to dig in and find a relationship and understand, and I think that's His MO.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ronnie. I think you're bang on that. I think there's that line about God helping those that help themselves. I think that's a very real.
It's a worldly doctrine, that one.
It is, and the more people I speak to, and like you said about maturity, like the more I find that I am mature, that's sort of the one fact of life that I've seen, is that the people I meet that want more out of their life, spiritually, emotionally, all those sorts of things, like they literally get what they put in, and the more work you do, it's like that gets rewarded. You're given like a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and that edge of your relationship just keeps sharpening and sharpening and sharpening. Is the way that it feels to me, anyway.
Yeah, I know God blesses those that reach out and to shine the light, because that's what attracts love, the light. So our Creator wants to, and He does, loves us unconditionally, but of course He wants to teach us to love our fellow man the same way as He loves His creation. Like heavens to murgatroyd, He created a beautiful place for us to live on. We seem to have poo-pooed that, but
yeah, no, that's exactly right, Ronnie. We'll come back to that, Ronnie. I have another question about about where you came from, to give some people some context about you. Could you tell me where you grew up, Ronnie, how you grew up, and what kind of family you came from?
Excuse me. I grew up. I was born in 1951 in Vancouver, and that's where I spent my youth up until 26 years old. And and I lived in the downtown core, so my backyard was basically the Skid Row part of Vancouver. A lot of homes that were built after the Second World War, and it was a pretty rough neighborhood. I went down to the grocery stores on 6th Street, Vancouver, 5086 just off of Main, and my brother and my brother, two brothers, and I scored a nickel for allowance. So we went down to the corner store and bought some Jawbreakers. And upon coming home, unfortunately, I wasn't as smart as my older brother. When this here other 5-year-old kid had a knife on us, and he pulled off an armed robbery on the sidewalk, and my brother Archie handed his candies over, and I had kind of a different type of outlook on life, and this so-and-so was not going to take my candies. And so that's what happened, but I ended up getting his knife too because it was stuck in my shoulder, right? But that's kind of the start of my childhood in Vancouver, and so that's kind of how but they had a boys club there, and they still do have the boys clubs in Vancouver, and they're still a wonderful thing. But that kind of saved my bacon, because I grew up in an alcoholic family, and their morals weren't of the highest standard. So, you kind of take that through your life, the old monkey see, monkey do, until I come to reason that if I want to call myself a man, I got to be responsible for the choices I make, and I better start making good ones. So that was all. It's all scriptural. So that's the kind of stuff that's helped me to mold me to where I'm at now.
So when you were a kid, you you grow up hard, and growing up hard in East Van, I can tell you, I was never stabbed growing up, Ronnie. I had a lot softer than you did. Did you, were you aware of a God or something more at that time, or was that just survival on the street when you were a kid? There was no time to think about anything extracurricular, like there might be something bigger than me. It was just we're fighting to eat, we're fighting to survive, and that's it, and that's all.
Yeah, it was like survival instinct, but as far as like the neighborhood that I lived in, the Salvation Army were quite active. So I, as a young boy, I knew their ministry, and I completely respect them for what they did. But I had no learning of the Holy Bible. Like my family was, I don't think the pair of them ever read a book, any kind of book, So yeah, that come kind of later in life. But I know that we're created in our Creator's likeness and His image, as the Scriptures say. So whether or not we have a relationship with the Creator, we still have like those traits, and some of them come to surface because some of the kindest and most moral people that I've met over my walk in life is not necessarily anybody of a faith, but just that gift is out there for any one of us to grab hold of, whether we know it or not. Because yourself, Matt, that the Scriptures, when Jesus came, He let us know he fulfilled the law, and it was with love, right? So like he brought the message to humanity to love one another, love God first, and he'll teach us how to love humanity. And that's our fellow man, So I think those are the two things that I like to focus on when it comes to my relationship with the Creator. Not all the religious doctrine and all the hoopla and the us and them attitude, which is in most religions, eh?
That us versus them attitude seems to be. I mean, I think humanity has always been tribal to a fairly large extent. I mean, you know that if you grow up on any street in any city, but I really feel like that us versus them is really doubling down in the world right now, and it's very. I think it's very easy for people now to turn their back on their brother. They don't consider that fellow man as their brother and sister. It's become an other. It's become an us versus them. Like they are the other.
Yeah, I find that distasteful with organized religion, because the simple fact is that's not the message that the Son of God gave us. That's to love one another. And we got into nationalism, putting borders up, and then we got into the us and them and individualism, and instead of collectivism, it's all individualism. That's kind of the culture that was brought into the Western world, eh? Because there was a schism between the Eastern mythical Christianity and the rational Christianity, and that's with the white philosophers. It's almost a religion of philosophers instead of what the Bible's all about, and it's about our relationship with God of the Bible, not God of the philosophers.
Well, Ron, I've never heard anyone say that before, but that's exactly how I feel about it. Is that so much of the Christian faith that I know, the Christian faith that I grew up in. I grew up in a Catholic home, and like where you said, it becomes a religion of philosophy, and like that's the religion I grew up in. I grew up with people talking about the philosophical side of it, and nobody talking about like the practical bit of it. Like, this is what we do. This is actually how we live. It was always smoke and mirrors, and everyone was happy to tell you how religious they were, how spiritual they were, but nobody was really digging in, I found, in my experience.
Yeah. I've come to understand in the Western Christian society, we've kind of left the intention of our God when it comes to one another, because there's so much of that us and them versus them. I've heard it in the Christian church about Muslim people and Jews and all of this stuff, and they got I know that Satan is very instrumental in making things chaotic, and there's a lot of people that profess to faith are in quite a chaotic scene, and I pray for those folks. I think their intentions are good, but it's a pretty powerful spirit of Satan is the ruler of this world. So that worldly spirit where everything is connected to a buck, everything has a price. That's how what was that Russ says? Oh yeah, $1 Million Man. Said everybody's got their price, eh?
That's right.
That's kind of how our society, and Satan's the mastermind of it, and he's deceived a lot of people, and he continues to. I admire him, the way he's able to do things, but I hate him. I wish we could, as a worldly society, come up against that arsehole and stop killing each other and starving each other, and yeah. I don't know, Matt. I really, I like to believe that man can turn this around. Where we've taken ourselves, but I'm not quite. I'm a little skeptical of that, Matt. And,
Ronnie, do you when you were talking about Satan, do you believe Satan to be like Satan is an entity unto himself, or do you think it's a part of like the human condition that we have a capacity to live like dickheads, like we have a capacity to hurt each other, or do you think it's something outside of ourselves? Like do you view Satan as something outside of ourselves that's influencing us, or do you believe there's a part in all of us that is capable of those things?
Yeah, I think there's a war in the spiritual realm. You know, spiritual war. Satan wants to take us all out, and well, the spirit of Satan, as you can see it in some people, like you can see it in people that are very self-centered, and there's a lot of that influence in our society. You know, that me, myself, and I, and none of these here spirits come from the Creator. It comes from the enemy of our soul. And I think to answer the question about Satan, as the scriptures say, he was created, and he was created, and he was an angel, and there was a whole bunch of them who were created. And that's prior to God the Father creating our planet and us. And you know, like Jesus, as the scriptures say in the book of Isaiah, the prophecy that he's the Savior, the Messiah, and so that's 700 years before Christ hit the scene. That the prophet of God Isaiah was talking about our Savior's appearance. So that prophecy was fulfilled, and so I'm just waiting for the other prophecy on his return, and I believe in the guy loves us so much. He's going to bring some correction. You know, I don't know when. Only the Father knows, as the scriptures say. So he'll know when to shut down this system and create the heavenly kingdom that he wants to usher in, and recreate the earth and recreate the heavens. So with that recreated place to abode, you won't have somebody in the background wanting to cut your throat, or it'll be all people that have a relationship and a love relationship with humanity. You know, and I think that goes with all religions, because I think, you know, especially the monotheistic ones, you know, the Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, like our three faiths, the Jewish faith, the Muslim, and ours, and the Christian one, is so they're all monotheists, but Satan's had a wonderful time tearing apart faith systems that we're called to love one another and to love God. You know, so Satan, I believe there's a force that wants to destroy us, and he seems to be quite successful at it, with the influences that come from him about the bottom line, the buck, Yeah. So,
Ronnie, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, they're already thinking, the billionaires are thinking of there's water on the moon, so they is wondering how to figure out how to make a resource out of that, right? You know, like we got a whole bunch of weird thinking people out there, and you would think a person that's smart enough to get rich wouldn't be stupid enough to think like that, but I've been wrong about a lot of things.
Ronnie, what did you do for a living professionally?
Well, for the most part of my working career, I took a steam fitting and pipe fitting apprenticeship, and that's pretty much what I did for 42 years of working. Yeah, that's pretty much what I did. I did a few little odd jobs when there was no pipe fitting around, like bouncing in nightclubs and beer parlors and stuff. But there wasn't much money in that. But the pipe fitting is what I found worked for me as far as providing a good livelihood for myself.
So I would actually like to say to everyone listening some context to Ron now. Like so Ron, I met Ron. I worked for and with Ron in 2007. So I was in pipe trades as well. I'm no longer in it. I don't have 40 years in pipe trades, but I met Ron as I just had finished my journeyman in pipe fitting, and when I met Ron, he was it's hard to give some context. Ron's a really big man. How tall are you, Ronnie?
I'm 6 feet tall.
So he's 6 feet tall, and I don't know what you would have weighed when I met you, 230 maybe, 240, and you were already, what, 60 years old at the time? In your late 50s at the time?
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's right.
And
yeah,
you were in great shape. I remember meeting you and thinking, what a monster of a man is in phenomenal shape for his age. And I became very close to Ron right away. I was really drawn to him, and I was so drawn to Ron because of what he said at the beginning, his where he grew up, how he grew up. He has a real sort of a real honest edge, a real street edge. He grew up an honest person, you know. He had a hard upbringing, but he's a great person, and I think we all know people like that. But Ron was the very first person to ever speak to me. I grew up in a Catholic church, and so in 2007 I would have been 23 or 24 years old, and Ron was the first person that ever spoke about God to me as more than a philosophy, as a way of life. And I remember, Ron, I went to your house after I stayed in the town we were working in. I stayed for the weekend, and I went to your house, and we drank about 17 bottles of Shiraz. We drank about 17 bottles of Shiraz, and you spoke to me the entire time about Jesus and God and what that means for humanity, and how you need to love your neighbor and how you need to love yourself. And it was so impacting because I was such an animal at the time. I mean, I was an animal young kid, right? Like, just, oh man, all I was looking for was girls and fights. Like, that's all I was interested in back then. But when I found when a man who had stories like you, who had a life like you, who had the same wake that you left behind you, started speaking to me about these things, it was very impactful. And I remember, like, it honest to God, was the first time I'd ever had conversations about God, spirit, all of those sorts of things, I was speaking to somebody who I was actually looking up to rather than looking laterally at. And I remember, like, growing up in churches, hearing a priest speak, it wouldn't mean anything to me. Like, I didn't understand them. We were past each other. They were looking down at me, and I was looking past them. We had nothing to talk about. They weren't talking about the problems that I had. I found out anyway. I found that they were missing with me, where, you know, you had all these stories about growing up hard on the street and struggling, and you had these same tendencies that the rest of us animal pipe fitter kids had, but you still had this way of reconciling the world that made so much sense to me, because it still all looped back to, like, it was always about love and understanding. Like, you always talked about love and understanding, and, like, you have to carry yourself this way and you have to live this way. And did you have to make an effort to? And I should actually say too, before I ask you that, we used to go to Ron's house or go to Ron's room, wherever we were, and he would literally have, like, you'd call it, I don't know if you remember, Ron, but you would call it communion. You'd say, why don't you come over for communion? And there'd be dope smoked, and there'd be Shiraz drank, and there'd be all this stuff happening. But in the midst of it, there was all these young construction people who are not listening to anyone talk about Jesus. There is no goddamn way that you could have sat us down in a church and had us listen to anybody, and you would talk to a room of 10, 15 kids, and we were all sitting there listening to you. Like, that was such a strange, I don't know if you remember these times, Ron, but they were so strange to me because,
I do, Matt, because I took that as in my role of leadership is to show leadership and I think good leadership is one that makes an effort to make the culture that you're employed in a pleasant place to be, and not a place where you have to fear retribution if you make a mistake. I just use that philosophy and treat people the way they ought to be. It's all those are scriptural things, and I got I don't know, Matt. Even before I became a Christian and started learning, reading, I had and I didn't understand at the time, but God had put a compassionate heart in me, in so much as I always despised bullies, and that's one of the reasons that when I was younger I kept myself in great shape, because I, back then before I had the faith, you just dealt with things with your hands, And so I'm glad that I don't need to do that, but I'm still drawn to those that are less fortunate in so much as the thought processes and what have you goes. And I got that developed too, working in the, volunteering in the care home, right? Because people, we need to, we're interconnected, whether we know it or not, but the philosophies of the Western Christianity is pretty based on rationalizing everything and not so much about the mythical part of, the scriptures, not the stuff that's all rationalized, but the mythos, say. And I know I've talked to Christian people, and they think myth, derived from the word mythos, is not true. It's not the truth. But, that's where that Western Christianity, all your white philosophers getting into the scene there, and I think, upsetting the apple cart to an extent. The message was that we're to love one another, and I find a lot of the churches don't promote that as they ought to,
Ron, when you said, I sort of want to talk about how you grew up and the person you are now. I've never known you to be. I've never known you to be violent or to be hot-headed. I think that's why I was so drawn to you. Like, you could see that you had that streak. Like, you carry yourself like a man who's lived that life, but you don't live that way. You actually day to day live with you're a loving and compassionate person. Was that an easy thing for you to do when you found God or when you came to God, or was it still a struggle? Like, did you still, like you said, like you solve, when you're growing up, you solve problems with your hands. Was it easy to drop when you came to God, or was that a thing you had to talk yourself out of? Like, someone pisses you off and you want to smash them, or was it pretty quick?
Yeah, it was pretty quick, because I was getting on in years when I came to the faith. I was 42, 43 years old, so the horns had fallen off already. but I learned over the years to be able to communicate with my vocals instead of the violent side of things. And the relationship with God is really helped smooth off the edges. Like, we're called to love one another and not to beat up one another because you don't agree. We need to learn to be more compassionate to one another, I believe, and to listen to one another and the thought processes. And because I think we won't get out of this pickle until we learn how to communicate with one another and show love to one another. That's worldwide, not just the Christian faith, but worldwide. Eh? So I'm kind of waiting and just living my life and enjoying it. Like, things are going to start opening up for me so I can get back to the care home and what have you. So my life is pretty narrow anyways, Matt. So I just focus on the Word of God, and I read good books, and I listen to good music, and I just wake up with a thankful heart and what's the next adventure? Because I go for walks every day, and being blind, there can be some adventures that I may not want to speak about on this podcast.
But I should say, Ron, too, I mentioned in the introduction that you are blind, that you came blind in the last couple of years. It's been I'm 70 now, and I went blind at 59, so it's 11 years now. It'll be the start of the 12th year in August. That's when I went blind in August. Are you entirely blind, Ron, or can you still see some?
Well, I'm not black blind. Only about 10% of people that are visually impaired are actually black blind. But my eyesight doesn't permit me to read. It doesn't permit me to watch a television set or to look at pictures and all of those kind of things, or read a book. But with the modern technology, I've been able to overcome that because I love to read. So I have an audio book reader that I got through the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. So they send me books of what I want every week. I get about 3 books, and so that keeps me entertained, eh? And I'm like a sponge as I'm getting older and retired. I got more time instead of, I'm not in that hamster wheel anymore, like providing for my family and going to work to and fro and what have you, right? So it's kind of nice and relaxing. So I kind of love being retired, eyesight or no eyesight.
Yeah. Did becoming blind, Ron, were you ever agitated with God, or was that your path and you accepted it wholeheartedly? That was it, and that was all. Going blind, who cares?
Yeah, no, I come to understand that as time went, that it was decisions that I made prior to going blind about how to look after myself better. With what fuel I put into my body and when I ate and when I didn't eat. Fasting has become a very important part of my life, and it's brought spiritual health to me and physical health. Like I have my body now is like it was when I was 26 years old. Although I got a little more aches and pains than I did when I was 26 years old, but my body weight and all that is the same as it was then. So changing the regiment of the fuel we put into our body has been very important in my life. Like I was getting ready to go into care home about 3 years ago, and I read this book called the Obesity Code, written by Dr. Jason Fung, and it turned my life around.
Okay.
Physically, it's turned my life around. Like I was telling you last time, I'm working on getting a checker plate abdomen, eh?
At 70 years old.
Yeah, let's go for it. You know. Yeah. Oh yeah. Because it's really helped me, especially get through these times of being by yourself a lot. I've been fortunate that I have a roommate, but I found that the exercising and eating properly is bringing me out the ass end of this, feeling fairly optimistic about my health. You know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I figured, what the heck, we'll put in the effort. I know that our body is something that we ought to respect. And if we're not, if we learn that we're not fueling it properly or not doing what we ought to do, and then it's shame on us,
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when I met you, Ron, I'm sure when I met you, and that would have been, so that was 2007.
Yeah.
You were doing north of 100 push-ups every morning, and just like that was it. That was just what you did in the morning. Like that's what you were doing then.
Yeah. Well, what I've been doing now, that's still part of my routine. But I've been able to, because I think of losing some of the weight from eating properly. Like I've eliminated refined carbohydrates, that's wheat and sugar, entirely from my diet. And I don't eat that anymore. And the fat that I had on me, it was like a miracle. It's fallen off, and it's amazing. But it takes a little discipline. But we've been able to attain discipline with different things that we've done in the world, like exercising, martial arts, the rest of these things that we do. After a while, we feel that you never want to stop that again.
Isn't that the truth? I have the same thing in my life. I haven't my wife and I take our exercise very, very, very seriously. In the last couple months, we've been busy, and I suppose everyone says this, and it's a bullshit excuse, but we've been busy, and so I haven't been working out as much as I need to be, and it's really starting to mess with my head. Like I need to really get back on it and dig into it, because it's like you say, it helps with my sanity.
Yeah, our bodies tell us that.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm back at it, it's been 3 years, and since I was blind, I went through a lot of illness prior to going blind. I burned out, and so my body kind of shut down, and that's prior to going blind. So, and then when I went blind, it just compounded to the problem. So I ended up leaving exercising alone for about 7 years because all my joints were sore. And once I started training again and eating properly, eating whole foods, things fell into sync. Like my shoulders, like I can reach back behind my back and scratch it now, and I don't have excess weight on me, because that's pretty hard to pull around, especially when you get older.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, so like I've let that go. When I met you, I was probably about 225, 230 pounds, but I brought my body weight down to 195, and I find that it's a lot easier on my joints and what have you.
I bet.
Yeah, so it's been a wonderful thing, because I was for years led around by the medical people to follow the symptom around with pills, instead of going right to the root cause, and that's in type 2 diabetes. That's a disease called obesity. And, and from obesity, diabetes type 2 can hook up and become your friend.
Did you were you not eating healthy at all, Ron, or you were eating healthy but not as healthy as you are now?
Well, I didn't. I was ignorant. I didn't know that the medical profession, being a type 2 diabetic, they told me that it's important to eat whole grains. And as it's turned out, that's old school stuff, right? That's 20th century. We're in the 21st century. So I've had for most all of my diabetes. I was diagnosed 25 years ago or so, but I was never spoken to about the complexity of my hormones. If you got fat, you were just you're lazy and you're a sloth, and you made bad decisions. But a lot of people didn't understand, a lot still don't. It's a hormonal thing. Because when I started reading that, the light started coming on, because I've never been a lazy person. But as it turned out, I was eating the wrong foods, and that was refined carbohydrates. And once I stopped that, I got educated on it and stopped it. My health is much better.
That's amazing.
It's like night and day, actually. I followed the book, and I read the book, and I study it, and I keep on it, because we do have a tendency to forget stuff. And it's just helped me to prolong, a healthy body, and that's what we're called to look after our bodies, temples of God, right? So
for sure.
This makes sense if you want to have a wholesome life, incorporating some activity that keeps you sane is appropriate.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, to me it's not a vanity thing, but I do like I like hearing that what I've been doing visually is nice. You're looking good, Ron, and stuff like that. That's encouraging, but it's not a vanity thing. I'm too old for that crap. I just like to keep my armor in place,
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Did you say, Ron, that you volunteer at a group home?
Yeah, there's an old folks home, and they've got on one side they have the folks that need care, and the other side a lot of them need care too, but they call it independent. The independent side. So what I started doing was I was invited to go and talk to people on the care side. So I've done that for a few years up until the COVID. So I'm looking forward to going back. What they'd normally do, what would be happening is at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, or 2:45, the care aides, or not the care aides, but the recreational people, and the care aides, would bring people down to the main floor where we had our gathering. And it was kind of something that I've really grew to enjoy, and met some people there and had opportunities to befriend some and visit them and what have you, because a lot of people in those places don't get the fellowship that they need, because we all need it, whether we know it or not. So it's going to be nice to go back and see some old friends if they haven't all died on me. you gotta make your friends pretty quick in there, Matt, because they're here today and they're gone tomorrow. Right? So you don't want to be like a wallflower and wait for your relationship, right? You want to get right on that.
Do you speak to people in there about the good word, Ron, or do you just sort of embody the word for them?
What I like to do is I like to express the gospel with the way I live my life, not so much by what I say, but the things that I do to express my love for my fellow man. And so, unless a person, what has happened is unless somebody asks in our gathering, I don't talk about God that much, but there's some women there and some men that have a relationship with their Creator. So I have the opportunity to hug them and talk to them if they want to talk about the faith. So it's kind of a platform. Like I'm able to, once I get relationships intact with people that I'm meeting, and just ask them if they'd like, a visitation. Because I'd love to visit them if they'd want me to visit. And then when you're one-on-one, you can kind of discern where the person's heart's at, in so much as their religious belief system, And, I like to think that I shine the light of God without saying a word when I go there. Just by hugging people and, like anything goes. Like when I was with the women, we talked everything about garter belts. All that kind of stuff, eh?
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Like, they're just old people that still got sense of humor,
That's right.
So we talk about things like that, about menopause and all those different things, eh? It's quite funny actually. When the first off, years back, I was going to visit the men on the alternate Tuesday, and we'd have coffee and tea and shoot the breeze. And a couple of them there, they like to smoke pot. So after our meeting, we'd go out and blow a joint, and then away they go back into their care home, eh? And so I went there on a one Tuesday, Matt, and I run into the rec person. Her name is Kat. And I says, Kat, is the party on? She said, it's the women today, Ron. I go, oh, okay. So she said, would you like to join? I says, yeah, I would. I says, but maybe ask them. Take me over and introduce me, and ask them if they would care if a man sat amongst them, right? So anyways, as it turned out, Matt, I was introduced. This is Ron, and he volunteers, and he comes to chit-chat with the men on, the Tuesdays. And she said, would you mind if Ron joined us? And the one lady, as it turned out, she was in her 90s in a wheelchair. She said, yeah, sit down. She said, can you get 5 more just like them? So I knew I'd fit in pretty good there, eh? They, the old folks, they still got some fire in there, eh?
That's great.
Oh yeah,
Ron,
that's a good. Yeah.
What is one thing that you can say from your life, or what is one thing that a younger person could take from your life, or from what you would say to them about how to help their life? What is one thing that you would say to a young person about your relationship with God, or what their relationship is or should be, that would help them and their lives and their family from today until forever? What's one thing you would recommend to somebody?
Well, I think what I'd recommend it happened in my life, and it didn't come from a church setting or a religious setting. I was in a bad boys' home, and my probation officer told me, he said, you're basically a good kid, Ron. You didn't get a real good shake when it comes to parents. He says, but I'm going to give you some advice. And this is what I would tell any young person that's listening to this podcast, is to don't hang around with losers.
Mm-hmm.
Hang around with winners, and then you'll be a winner. And I'm talking spiritual. I'm not just talking about the depraved that have a hard time making a living. We need to love them, but that's directly from the Word of God. We're to extend ourselves to one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think if I was trying to get through to a young person, there's so many exterior influences with this, with our Western Christianity, with the individualism and my rights and all the rest of it. But I think to be a good citizen of society, and that starts right when we're young, is from maybe a tweak on parenting skills, a tweak on consumptionism, materialism, needing to have 4 or 5 cars and half a dozen TV sets and all the rest of that kind of jazz. And all of those things, I think, influence in a negative way. So it's a hard question to really answer, but I think advice I would give a person is follow the belief system that you have. If it brings righteousness to your life and the life around you, to do the right things, and you can find that information in most all texts that speak on religion. Yeah, so I don't know if that really answered the question. This came to me, so I think the advice that I got once was I've had some bad advice before I came to faith. Different guys, and that their interpretation was, as it turned out, pretty hard for me to grab hold to when it come to expressing your faith about a loving God, right?
Absolutely.
All of that old King James versions of the Bible with all your, it's a Catholic gig, with all your heaven and hell, the hell part, and purgatory, and all the rest of that crap, right? So we got an uphill hill to climb, but I'm sure glad God's in control of that, because from my perspective, I can't really see it, right? But I'll just hang on to his apron strings and go through life, and just try to be the person that I was created to be, and that's to be fully human and to care about my fellow man. And his son, Jesus Christ, was a wonderful example for the personality of God the Father, and it's how he came for the oppressed, right? He didn't come from the religious. He didn't come to bring a different faith neither. He come to bring correction to the one that was here. And so, I think I'm rambling on.
No, that's you're bang on there, Ron. I didn't think you were rambling at all. That was an excellent answer to that was an excellent rebuttal to a world that's lost in consumption and has no more regard for sort of old ways of doing things. I think some old ways of doing things are antiquated, but I think that in what's happening with this new generation, what's happening in the media and all these things that are happening right now, it's like all old world sensibilities have been thrown out the window, sort of lock, stock, and two smoking barrels. Like it was, if any of these old not old ways of thinking, but like, to offer your life up to whatever deity you believe or you follow is not a thought that's resonating. It's not resonating on social media. It's not resonating in regular media. It doesn't resonate in anything you see of the outside world. To me, anyway. I mean, I think people still have these thoughts, I think, deep inside of them. But Ron, it's a 70-year-old old pipe fitter that had a hard upbringing that's saying those things out loud, that understands them, because you've walked that road. You understand that, and I think that's what's being lost, in particular with my generation, right? I think we assume we know what's best. I think because we read a book or we saw a picture, we saw a poster. I think we really start to disregard experience and relying on experience to sort of mirror our own experience after. I think that's the thing that's really happening right now.
Yeah, I think you're correct in that, Matt. I know that I've read a few books on it actually, and it's to do with how man started out. They were hunter-gatherers, and then the agricultural era developed. This is thousands of years later. We were scouring the forests for our food and our medicines, like they did on this continent right up until, 18th century. But going back in BC, before Christ, we had this hunter-gatherers. We didn't have agriculture, wasn't developed yet. And agriculture is what technological change, just like our social media is now and all the technical advances that we made. But it seems to me, Matt, that all the technical advances we've made have come back and bit us in the ass. And I'll just give you a couple examples. Like the biggest driving force behind our air that we can hardly breathe in some places in the world is to do with automobile emissions.
Mm-hmm.
You see, at one time, the automobile, when Ford first built that puppy, that was just for your very rich, and there was no roads then, so people just drove it to church or whatever to show off their new car, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as technology kept on going, all our areas around our cities, we could build highways and put cars all over the place. So everything was architecturally designed after that for automobiles, and that was a technological change. And you can see where that's got us.
Mm-hmm.
And another one that I find quite intriguing is the agriculture. The scriptures tell us how we ought to provide for ourselves with our growing techniques in the scriptures. But no...
Do they really?
Oh, yeah. God's too stupid, right? So, we the food that they provide for us is what's causing the obesity. The fructose from corn, and these crops are subsidized by taxpayers, and wheat is another one. And both of those food products were designed, I believe, to feed the masses of people that were going to come into the world. And what's ended up happening is by eating those refined carbohydrates, the pharmaceutical people love it because 1 out of 4 people is diabetic because of obesity from eating the foods that they've manufactured for us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like it's a conspiracy, but I like to think that it wasn't done with that intention. But that's exactly what's happened to the world society. It's a plague. Obesity is a plague. It's by what we eat. It's not being a sloth.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know what's crazy about that, Ron, and it makes me so happy to hear you speak about refined carbs and sugars and on and on. And Ron, you are the only one of the baby boomer generation talking like this. It is impossible honest to God, you're the only one I've ever heard say that. I have said I've had these conversations with my parents, I've had these conversations with family members, and I don't know if it's because your generation grew up with the food pyramid and grains being the staple on the bottom, but if you say to a baby boomer that grains are a bad thing, they're trying to do everything but punch you in the face to get you to take that back.
Oh yeah. That's a true story, and I know from getting educated on it, that's because of the addictive properties. of refined carbohydrate. If you try to yank refined carbohydrates away from your fellow man, and he doesn't have the knowledge that he needs to have with that statement, and then he's just going to poo-poo that. You know?
Oh yeah,
because we've been indoctrinated, and that's one thing that I've become very aware of in the last 10 years, that our whole system of things in our Western society is kind of based on indoctrination. And the last 10 years or so, I've gotten out of that box and like to think creatively. You know? And, so
having said that, Ron, like you just said, you got out of that box and you think creatively. Has your relationship with God changed in the last 10 years? Has that amended as well? Have you rethought some perspectives and come up with things that you think are more appropriate, sort of based on what you were saying? Like there are two methods to do this. There are the people that have their boots on the ground trying to do God's work, and there are people that are trying to philosophize. So from a person who's trying to walk that path, have you amended any spiritual beliefs in the last 10 years with the way that you've changed your thought as well?
Yeah, I have, but my relationship with my Creator and His Son has just progressed. But as I've walked towards, in God's will, I've found that He wants me to be creative in my thought processes, right, and not be laden with doctrines that are kind of dogmatic and not really of any value. And so lots of things that I've heard in different fellowships over my walk and my relationship with the Creator is like we're all in process. So a lot of the teachings that I've heard in Christian settings, I don't buy, but I know that none of us are perfect. So what I do is I try to filter that stuff out and just try to be a brother, not to be a judgmental person, but I interpret things quite a bit differently than a lot of the other Christian brothers and sisters. And I know that, and I don't have a problem with that, because I believe that God digs me. We all have. Most of us have given the ability to discern and to understand the Bible as a love letter to each and every one of us, but not to be. Be very careful when it comes to false teachings, of course, because the Bible forewarns us of wolves in sheep's clothing. So we don't have an excuse, I don't think, if we just let people in the religious circles walk us around with a ring in our nose and tell us how we should think. I believe that is not productive. So I'm happy for my maturity in the faith and reading the Bible and coming up against different doctrines that have been pushed down my skull over the years. Like God, like you said one earlier, God loves those who love, or God helps those who help Himself. The prosperity message and that was going around for a few years. Like, give us a whole bunch of tithes and God will really look after you. That kind of stuff. It become very distasteful. And as I've read the history of religion, it's kind of, man has kind of poo-pooed it. With our different ways of thinking. And like I said earlier, us against them is the big one. That's the biggie, because that's totally contrary to God's word to us as His kids. So like I go, but pretty heavily engaged in reading my Bible on my own, and I have a couple of good Christian brothers that we do Bible studies and what have you. So, I won't probably be going back until this COVID stuff is cleaned up, because as I was telling a friend of mine, I was saying about all of the false teachings and what have you, and I don't like to think that I need to separate myself from that, but try to be the light,
Mm-hmm.
Because it's been pumped into our heads so much with this here world system we're living in, that individualism and me, myself, and I, and it's permeated. It's in a lot of it's in the church itself, right?
Mm-hmm. It is.
There's a lot of sincere people, that have a loving relationship with their Creator, but a lot of them go just for a religious duty. Sit in the pew and, they've done their religious duties. They never read their Bible or try to extend their relationship with their Heavenly Father by learning Him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that needs to be more encouraged in the Christian circles, that we need to really take it serious and know what the will of God is for us in our lives.
Ooh.
Quit guessing.
That was very well said, Ron. Is there?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Ron. Go ahead.
We all come short of the glory of God. So all of us are in process, and I think the more that people of faith that understand that, I think the better off our faith will be, because it's a lot of black eyes within Christianity.
There definitely is I think there's a lot of black eyes in a lot of, like you were saying, in a lot of organized faith, but Christianity finds a way to, I don't know, just keep getting beat up. And I mean, I try not to talk about this on these podcasts, but like with what you just said, I can't help it now. But like this residential school thing that's happening, like, for the life of me, Ron, like I can't imagine, like the Catholic Church has been talking since the dawn of time that they are the voice of God on the planet. Like, you're the voice of God. Why isn't the Pope here on bended knee trying to figure out what went wrong in these schools, trying to talk to these communities? Like, there's no, I had this conversation the other day. I said, like, a good place to start with these residential schools is do what Jesus would do if he was here. And, everything I hear on the Catholic side, or I speak to Catholics, and a lot of people are defending not defending the actions of the church and not defending the actions of residential schools. But I've heard people say, like, people aren't speaking enough about what good residential schools did, what good the church has done. Like, what a crazy thing to think out loud. You've got 1,000 dead babies that nobody's accounted for, and every single rational thinking person and their dog should be saying, what do we do to make this better? Like, something went wrong here. And it's not a Christian response, I don't think.
No, it's not. And I think what perpetrated all of it was that spirit of colonialism, and it's happened all around the world, not just in our country, but all around the world, where there was suppression of the first peoples. Your local yokel, so to speak, people that were there many, many years before. I think it was about 6 Christian countries: France, Great Britain, the United States of America had their share of it, but colonialized, right? Took over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Under the sanction of God.
Yeah.
And not this nation, not just this nation, Matt, but a lot of nations have had the same goings on with the residential schools, and children being treated less than.
Mm-hmm.
And with that simulation thing, they just wanted to kill the Indian, right? Excuse me. And when I was younger, Matt, I grew up in Vancouver, like I said earlier, and a lot of your First Nations people in downtown Vancouver were in the back alleys drinking wine out of brown paper bags.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never heard about the residential schools. We never were taught that in the school system when I went. And so I just thought of them as just being a bunch of drunks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had no idea their backstory, Matt.
Yeah.
And I've asked God to forgive me for not digging in more and taking responsibility instead of that indoctrination thing where we've been indoctrinated by they're less than, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the institutions in our governments are not obliging to the people that were here first, eh? So, yeah, we've got a complex situation, and I think a part of this stuff is helping empty the churches out.
Well, honestly, like, something's, like, personally, Ron, like, something's got to give. Like, it just, honest to God, it breaks my heart that these atrocities were committed in the name of what started the universe. That's what irritates me more than anything, is that, like you said, it was perpetrated on colonialism, but it was under the guise of a church who said, "We're here for you." Well, you weren't there for them then, so why aren't you there for them now? Like, you could run to this problem to try and fix it, like Jesus would. Like, if you had a sage like Jesus on the ground right now, you think he'd be avoiding this or running to it and saying, what do we do to make this better? How do we love the fellow man? How do we help you? How do we, like, on bended knee, hands out, washing the feet, all that stuff, How is that not being done right now?
Yeah, it's quite a complex thing, but I take homage in the scriptures in so much as God being in control, and
Mm-hmm.
that in His time, this system, this world system that we're living in, will be gone. So, that's when the kingdom of God will start shaking down in the creation
Mm-hmm.
of the new earth and the new heavens. So I keep myself glued in there, and I don't want to put my head in a hole like an ostrich, but I want to be, and I am aware of what's going on around me. And I'm feeling I'm blessed by being still around at this age to experience how things are coming down with humanity, and with our destruction of the earth that was created for us. It's
Mm-hmm.
quite like I'm not looking forward to the devastations that's coming our way, but it's scriptural as well. We messed her up, and some of us will be paying the price. Because the scriptures tell us that those who devastate the earth will be held accountable. And I asked a buddy of mine, how do we square that circle when it comes to all of us in the Western world have been complicit with the marketplace and capitalism and consumerism. And that's one of the biggest things in the real estate market in North America is warehouses for people's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So until these kind of things are brought under the control of the new kingdom, I can't really see us turning the ship around. But I hope I'm wrong. But I tend to be a little more optimistic when it comes to what our Creator will do at the end, to
Mm-hmm.
bring correction to this whole system that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
is there anything sort of we've been doing this for an hour and a half already, Ron, so to sort of wrap up our conversation, is there anything else you would like to say about your faith, about God, about anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to say, Ron? Is there anything more to sort of wrap up this conversation?
I would just like to finish with saying that God is real, and if we take the effort to have a relationship with the Creator of the heavens and the earth, put in our time, and He'll help develop our spiritual health and our caring for our fellow man. And so that's how I think I'd kind of end that, because that's where we need to go to seek that love that we need to learn how to love one another and stop this nonsense, But whether or not it's going to happen, I don't know, but I'm optimistic. So I just keep plugging in that direction of this, try to, to be a productive person in so much as lighten up somebody's life if I can,
Mm-hmm. Well, Ron Green, I hope that when I'm 70 years old, I have just a fraction of your sensibilities, man. I love speaking to you. I've always loved speaking to you, but you really help my in my 30s brain reconcile things when I speak to you. I really admire the way you think about things, Ron. I really admire the way you choose to live your life. I admire the way that you appreciate people, and I admire the way that you treat all people with love and understanding. And I've never known you to treat people any other way, but it's so refreshing to me, Ron, and I thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Okay, Matt, thanks again, and you take good care of yourself and your family, and
you too,
we'll
Ron.
talk to you soon, Matt.
Yeah, I love you.
God bless, buddy. I love you too.
Sure.
Bye-bye for now, Matt. We'll do this again.
You bet.
Bye-bye.